Okay, Carlo, here we are. Our first
Ian,
podcast episode. I'm excited.
amazing football, making us do
Football,
extra work.
I know, but we're texting a lot and chatting a lot about football, so I think this is just a way for us to do something with all of that energy and mental output, and hopefully have fun while doing it.
Yeah, and I think also to prove that everyone's side talk apparently is content or
Exactly,
not. You know,
exactly. I mean, see if
to
we
be determined.
can we be influencers in the world of football. But
That's right.
let's
Mostly
start
so I
with.
can join. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, no, you please.
Well, I was going to say, let's start with what we're calling this. And I was texting you earlier, and I was thinking about what to call this, and I had lots of bad ideas. And this bad idea is don't know much about football, and I thought that was like maybe a good idea, and maybe a bad idea. And then I saw this article which I shared with you. Um, a left back at Everton and a
Yeah.
Ukrainian international, Vitaly Michaelenko, apparently was very positive about Scotland's chances in the Euro competition, and then came out and said, "Clearly, I don't understand football." So I think it's if a Premier League
Eh,
footballer doesn't understand football, then maybe we have a chance. But I think it underscores kind of what we're here for, which is just to have a conversation. I don't know much about football. You know more than I do. You've been paying attention a lot longer than I have. But that's sort of the premise. What are your thoughts?
yeah. Well, I think that I definitely consider myself a fanatic,
Hmm.
right? And so I maybe like some other folks, just like consume as much content from like all the like devices that are like attached to me, like the content that's constantly coming to me. But I do feel like because I am an American, okay, no matter and we'll talk about this I'm sure throughout, but been to matches in Europe, different competitions, follow a lot of matches on a regular basis during the season, but always just feel like it's like when you become a naturalized citizen, you're always kind of feel like a foreigner, even though you've adopted all the customs, you learned everything, the history, and you really embrace it. You always just feel like you don't exactly know it fully.
So if it was basketball or American football or baseball, you'd feel different.
Yeah, I think they're like, since it's injected in the food, we all just take it in.
Yep.
And here, there's football, soccer in America is is the equivalent of like broccoli for children, right? And so like it wasn't really for them, and and that's changing, and I'm sure we'll talk about those things later. But yeah, I mean, American sports, even though I don't follow them anymore, I still can claim a level of expertise. I feel like because of my native blood.
It's just assumed that having
Yeah,
grown up here, you kind of know you've been to Super Bowl parties on an annual basis, et cetera, et
that's
cetera.
right.
Maybe hosted some. Yeah, so I mean, you know more about football than I do, but I did grow up in Scotland, in a country,
That's
one of
right.
the nations of Great Britain, or whatever we're called, where football is in the air, it's in the blood, it's in the water. Every day
Mm,
at school, I was playing football with my friends. I wasn't very good at football, and I definitely wasn't following football. And I moved around a lot, which might be part of it, but we weren't part of a footballing family. So I didn't grow up having a club that I was a big fan of, or that I was aware
uh-huh.
of the players' names or couldn't keep up with the stats. I had friends who traded, the sort of tops football cards and stickers and things, and were keeping track of who was who. But that wasn't me. But I did grow up with that sort of in the air. And so just like maybe you with other sports, football is something that I enjoy watching, I enjoy playing, but it's not something until recently that I was really into. And then two or
Yeah.
3 years ago, that changed. Maybe it was post pandemic, hanging out with people in the Bay Area who were watching Liverpool, and so that's kind of when I got hooked. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast, apart from spending time with you to talk about football, was just kind of recognizing that change in me in 2 or 3 years, but especially in the last season, the last 12 months, going into the transfer season, which we're in now, and suddenly starting to pay attention to know who was coming and going, and just kind of building up that knowledge was a different pace for me and a different experience. And so that has been, looking back on it, an interesting chapter in my life, in particular around football.
Oh man, I love hearing about you coming to football, and I think for me as well, it was watching with other people, not just alone, but with others that really helped, bring it to life. I think, for me, I remember watching the World Cup that took place in Japan and Korea.
Hmm.
And that was like when I started to sort of like pay attention. And then in graduate school, a bald brown friend of mine who could be a twin, basically, invited me to watch a Liverpool match along with a professor at the university. And then it just kind of started rolling from there. And to me, just football aligns with so many like parts of my life, like philosophically and spiritually, and mind body connection and camaraderie, and so many other words come. But it was like sort of like starting to understand how football is always, the essence of football has like always been what I've been interested in. And now it's just like seeing that everywhere, and also just embracing the fact that this is like one of my passions in life. So I spend time doing it and spend time with people who are interested in it.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I think we'll get into more of that. I don't know how much spirituality we'll get into in this particular episode, but I'm digging it and I'm looking forward to us going down those paths. So why don't we get into it and talk about what we've been discussing and texting about in the last few days or week. But first, I think it's important, as any podcast, we have sponsors. And so our
That's right.
inaugural sponsors are Streamline Trenchless and Welty Construction. Those are the two companies that have been making noise outside my garage office all day. And so I've decided that they are our ambient noise sponsors for this podcast. I'll have to chase them up for some. So
Yeah,
maybe we'll get some others, or maybe they'll just be our season sponsors. We'll see. Depends how long the projects go.